Introduce myself. I'm Doug Mayo. I'm the County Extension Director here in Jackson County. And I'm the one charged with beef cattle and forage management. And I'll be glad to visit with you. Our next presenter is our keynote speaker, Dr. Rick Rasby, joined the University of Nebraska Department of Animal Science in 1986. So almost as long as our event has been happening. He's been working with cow-calf producers in and around Nebraska, and is currently serving as a cow-calf specialist in Nebraska. And I really wanted somebody that kind of had a real vision for this 40-year period and the changes we've seen, but more importantly, a clear vision of things to be looking at in 2025 and beyond.
This is a cow that I think is a really good cow, and that's the sandhill in the background, and we call that cow Husker Red. Okay, and she's 3/8 Galvy, 5/8 Red Angus. Okay, and she fits that really well in our system. Pretty good cow, 5-year-old cow, 1250 mature weight, got a nice teat and udder on her. She raises a pretty good calf, and so the idea is part of that is how do you fit the breed type of the resources that you have. But the idea is that it's been pretty good from a profitability standpoint over the last few years. I would say those producers that can keep cows grazing the longest throughout the year are the most profitable by far. Would you agree with that? And so to me, how do you figure your system out, whatever your system is, to keep the cow harvesting, right? Because really, she's just a harvesting machine, right? That's what we have her around for, right? To raise a calf, and she basically takes grass that's not, or a forage space that's not usable by humans, basically putting it into protein. This number looks pretty good, right, early on in the years, but doesn't look very good right now. So you have the high prices, but they're offset by high input costs, right? But I think the idea is that high prices, high input costs, and the other thing is cow inventory. I think we really need to think about where that needs to be at. So I'll talk about three things and intertwine a couple things in there. So items that I'll discuss. Develop a customized herd health program. I'm not going to take a lot of time on that. The thing I want to point out, it's really important to have a good relationship with your veterinarian. I'll point out some things that we'll talk about here, but I'm not going to talk about what you need for a herd health program. I'm going to talk about bull management strategies. And I think those two factors right here, they should be easy to manage, to tell you the truth. The only thing is that bulls, in my opinion, are easy to manage, but also easy to neglect. Okay. And well, I'll just talk a little bit about strategies there, and then I'll spend a lot of time on cow management strategy. Okay, so that'll be the three kinds of things that we'll talk about here as we move forward. Open cows are a financial drag on the cow-calf enterprise. Would you all agree with that? You're going to have them, but it's a drag on the enterprise. And you think about, I don't, even though I think boners and breakers, Jeff, I think a couple weeks ago, anywhere between the $1.35 to $1.10, right in that range, right? Boners being higher, breakers higher, right? But to me, a lot of times they don't cover cost, even though they have pretty good price point. Because here's what I think is embedded in there. Embedded in there is you have to keep back possibly more heifers, right? That means you have fewer calves to sell at weaning time. Those young females, right? They take more labor and they take more expensive feed to develop them. And every year they'll wean the lightest calf. Okay. So I think even though you have pretty good cold cow prices right now, in fact, really good cold cow prices, the idea is I think you have these kinds of things embedded in there that how do you, especially if you have to cull more than you typically have to cull. They're really expensive, but the open female is one of those that need to be pregnant for a second time, right? And that's a tough go, right? She got pregnant her first time, which is probably the easiest time for her to get pregnant. But for the second time, that's the toughest time, right? And so if you open that second year, you don't have a lot of dollars to spread that cost over top of, right? Right? You got herd, you got calf to sell. Okay. So I think the thing I'd like to maybe point out here is how do you increase reproductive performance economically? Because I think, Dr. Thrift, I think we can get pregnant calves, but it'll be at cost, right? And so the idea is how do you optimize that for your operation? I'll just talk about some of the things that we do here in Nebraska. So the veterinarian, I think veterinary client relationship is really important. Develop a herd health program for the cows, calf, heifer, and bulls. when those management strategies should happen, such as vaccination programs, when things like breeding sounds evaluation, prey check, and other kinds of things need to happen. Have supplies on hand. What supplies does that veterinarian want you have on hand when he's not there? Okay? Because sometimes they can't be there all the time. Then supplies for calving, that's really important. And then how do you handle calving difficulties? Okay? A lot of that can be through the breeding program, right? But then if you do have it, how do you handle that? I didn't talk about this much in the past, but I think, what is your biosecurity plan for your herd? Because I think females are more mobile this time of year, or not this time of year, but now. And so to me, at least in Nebraska, how do you have a biosecurity plan to keep things like trichomoniasis out of your herd? Okay? And we used to never think about that. That was always something in the West that they thought about. But then how does, it's moved further to the east, but to me, what does your biosecurity plan look like to keep reproductive diseases out of your herd? Does that make sense? I think I would never thought about that 30 years ago, but I sure think about that now as I talk to cow-calf producers. When you get new bulls on your location, get it well before the breeding season, you know there's going to be socialization going on, right? They're going to fight and they have a pecking order. Plenty of areas so bulls don't get injured. Evaluate bulls well before the start of the breeding season. So if you have to get extra bulls, you at least know that, right? Go to a BSC, breeding soundness evaluation. So I talked about Husker Reds, right? Those are, the top bull is a Husker Red and the bottom bull is a Husker Black. And they look different, don't they? Right? One's red and one's black, but when you pull the papers on them, there's not a lot of difference between those two bulls. Okay. Genetically, there's not a lot of difference. And so the idea there, this is part of the teaching herd. The idea there is that not everything has to be black, right? Not everything has to be a solid color, but what's under the hide is what's really important, okay? So the idea here is that this is part of the teaching herd, and those are the Husker Red, Husker Black, and we use Husker Red in the herds of Nebraska, or at least at the University of Nebraska. Other thing is the breeding season, bull to cow ratio, 1 to 20 for young bulls, 1 to 30 for maybe more mature bulls. It could be even a little bit higher based on your operation. At least in our country, depends on terrain, right? And size of the pasture, okay? So those are things that y'all think about. These are only guidelines, but you'll need to adapt that for your particular operation. We have some folks that do single sire pastures, okay? And that can be a challenge, okay? Because if a bull goes bad, then all of a sudden you have a bunch of open cows. So I work with producers, how can you avoid single sire pastures, okay? And it may be the fact that during the season, part of the season, they have enough cows that they need a couple bull service, right? So if one goes bad, the other one can pick up the slack. So how do you avoid that? And if you do have that, check breeding activity a number of times during the breeding season. Check them at least maybe 2 to 3 times during the breeding, 2 to 3 times a week during the breeding season to make sure that bulls are getting the job done. The other thing is you can record cows that have been bred, right? And if they come back in another time, when you come back at another time, something may be going wrong or something not in balance. After the breeding season, evaluate bulls for feet, leg, udders, scrotum, penis. At least in our country, after the breeding season, bulls are thin. Okay? Bulls are thin, especially young bulls are thin. So how do you manage young bulls? We put them back on pasture. Usually 4 to 5 months before the start of the breeding season, we start to get them back into their working clothes. Okay? And so we have a lot of March calving cows in Nebraska. So right now we're starting, at least in January, we start to get them back in their working clothes. And the thing that I like about starting well in advance is you don't have to feed them a lot of energy, right, to get them back into their working clothes. We can basically do that on dormant grass in our country, and we can do that with just a little bit of supplementation. I don't want to have to hurry that kind of thing because I just don't want to dump a lot of energy to bulls at that time. But we can start well in advance and start to get them back in their working clothes by the time they start the breeding season. So we start now in January for March calving cows. We'll have them invited to get for 6 after those bulls are in. May need to have a feed supplement. And what we do, at least if we have, let's say we have 10 or 12 bulls, is that we'll have them in the same pasture, a lot of room in there, and we'll just have drop zones for the supplement that we want. And after a while, those bulls will figure out where their drop zone is and basically what they'll eat out of that. A lot of times we feed them in a bunk. There'll be a lot of competition at the bunks. We basically spread out drop zones and feed them that way. Okay. You're doing good, Doug. So I thought maybe just take a little bit of time to talk about the cow side of things. And There'll be plenty of time for questions if you have. So over the last couple of years, we've done these cow clinics, and so, you can see me right there. Which one's one of
The little red one up top.
there you go. There's yours truly up there. But we hold these cow clinics at sale barn. And, the sale barn manager will keep us back a few cows that have gone through the market, coal cows, right? And so typically there'll be a lot of variation in their body condition. And we talk a lot about body condition because that's a really good way to manage your herd. It's much better than body weight, right? Body condition. So we use the 1-to-9 system, where 1 is a very thin emaciated animal and a 9 is a very fat and obese animal. In fact, you don't see very many 8s and 9s. We don't in our country because it's like boxcar Bertha, right? I mean, they are really, really fat. We don't see very many 1s and 2s either, right? Because they don't last very long in our country with cold weather. But the idea is that we use body condition score to manage the cow herd from a nutritional program standpoint. And I'll show you here just in a few minutes why that is important. But the idea is that body condition score is a better way to assess your nutrition program as compared to body weight. Indicator of nutrition program as compared to body weight has a huge impact on reproductive performance. And I'll show you that here in a few minutes. So let's back up just a little bit. So the cows that our condition scoring system we're going to talk about is the 1-to-9 system. Everybody know the 1-to-9 system? Really an assessment of fat. I call it body condition. Basically take a look at the brisket over the top, the hooks, the pins, and tail head, and you assess the body condition, okay? But I didn't have enough time to go through all the body condition score slides that we need to go through to do that. But this is what we've done over the last few years, is just to go back and talk about body condition score on cows and how it can be used to help manage the cow herd. We do those in sale barns. They're willing to keep that cows for us. So this is the condition score 5 cow, okay? And when you take a look at her, she doesn't have a lot of fat in the brisket, right? Doesn't have a lot of fat over the ribs. In fact, you can see the 12th and 13th rib. Doesn't have a lot of fat over the top, the hooks, pins, and tail head. In Nebraska, for March calving cows, we would like to have our cows at that body condition on average. That's mature cows, okay? So you'll have a lot of 5s, right? We have some 6s. You have some 6s. We have some 4s. You'll have some 4s, but on average, you should have a lot more 5s than you have 6s or 4s. Okay. So as we think about cow-calf management strategies, our strategy with our producers in Nebraska is how can you get to that body condition score 5? Because we know I'll show you here in a few minutes. We know that she'll do a really good job reproductively, not only at the time of calving, but also during that next breeding season. We work on strategies to get them to body condition score 5 prior to calving. Think about Nebraska, right? Is that you go when you go in the fall, right? About September, October, you got the grass is dormant, right? Native grass is dormant back before that time, but brome is dormant then. They're on dormant rain, corn stalks, right? Up to January, and then you mass people, hey, maybe even corn stalks after January. And then you're trying to get to March, right? And March would be when we want to have these cows with that kind of body condition. So we like to target mature cows to be in a body condition score 5, and then first calf heifers to be a little bit better body condition. Just to be a condition score 6 cow. Those are actually the same 2 cows. Okay. I just fed her down to a 3. I didn't show you a 4. I didn't show you a 4. I fed her up to 7. Because a lot of times when you get to body condition, you got to make sure that you're assessing body condition and you're not assessing muscle, and at least this time of year for us, hair, right? You got to get through the hair. But we would target our first calf heifers to calve in a body condition score 6. And I'll tell you why here in just a few minutes. So she's got a little bit of fat in the brisket. You don't see the 12th and the 13th rib. Turn up some condition over top the spinous process. She has just a little bit of fat in that tail head area. So we target cows to calve, March calving cows to calve in condition score 5, and heifers to calve in condition score 6. And so here's to me the big reason why, because you can relate body condition score to reproductive performance. So what is the postpartum interval? So Doug said that we're not going to have any tests, but there's going to be a test. Okay? No, there's not. There's not going to be a test. So the postpartum interval is what? From the time that she calves to the time that she exhibits an estrus after calving, right? That's the postpartum interval. So to have a cow maintain a 365-day calving interval, right? What's gestation? 285? Right? About 285. And then you have what? Another 85 days to get her pregnant to maintain a 365-day calving interval. So the idea is that your calving condition score 3 and 4 hard to maintain a 365-day calving interval, right? Some will, some won't. There's a lot. I've had cows breed up okay, condition score 4, but the minute you put stress on her after calving, she doesn't breed up very good. Okay? Condition score 5 and 6 cows, the postpartum interval is about 59, on average 55 days. She has a couple times, doesn't she? Right? You have a 21-day ester cycle. She's got a couple times that she'll be able to get red to maintain a 365-day calving interval. So the idea here is that body condition score is important. I think it's important for your systems as well. But this is one of the reasons why. How do you manage the postpartum interval? Okay? How do you manage the postpartum interval? Body condition is one of those. The other thing that's really important is calf survivability, right? So this is the graph here. It says, this is some old work by Ken Oldham, and he was at Colorado State. Is that this would be IgGs in the bloodstream of the calf 24 hours after calving. So where do IgGs come from? Immune globulins. Colostrum, right? Good. We're all on the same page. So to help that calf be able to fend off those early calf-hood challenges from a disease standpoint, they come from colostrum, don't they? So what happens when you have a cow that calves in thin body condition? Low IgGs in the bloodstream of the calf. What happens as you increase body condition? The IgGs in the calf increase. Now you take a look at that. It says after you get past 5 to 6, it's not, it basically plateaus out, doesn't it? So to go any higher, probably not all that important. But the idea is that thin calves that are born to thin cows have less IgGs in the bloodstream of the calf, and then have less ability to fight off early calf diseases. So I've given you 2 reasons why body condition at the time of calving is really important, right? One is it helps you manage the postpartum interval, which is really important, right, to make an efficient cow herd. The other one is to give a calf a chance, right? To give a chance to fight off until that immune system of that calf gets going. It needs to have some help to fight off those early calf disease. So again, body condition scores. Here's the other thing is that weaning can be a tool for you. And this would be some work that we did at Goodmanson at the Sandhills Laboratory, which is in Sandhills, university owned. It's about 11,000 acres, run about 600 cows up there. So here's change in body condition, and here's change in calf removal. So remove calves here, 2 weeks later, remove another set of calves, another set of cows. Okay, so every 2 weeks we took calves off the cow. Okay, and then measured body condition. So every 2 weeks, the calf stayed on the cow, we lost about 2/10 of the condition score. Okay? So it's really important to know, right? If you want to manage body condition and you're in a challenging situation, the idea is that you can use weaning as a management tool so that you can basically keep cows or at least not lose a lot of body condition, especially at certain times of the year. So the idea is that for each 2 weeks that you left the calf on the cow, she lost another 2/10 body condition score. Okay? So just a little bit of a moral story behind body condition. Achieving moderate body condition at calving is more effective than trying to regain energy stored after calving. Make sense? Because if you're going to try to gain energy stores and body condition after calving, what are you going to have to do? Feed her, right? Got to feed her a lot, Doug says. Yeah. So the idea here is that you'll have to feed her. And so if you give her energy, what is she going to do with that energy? Is she going to put back fat on? What is she going to do? She's going to milk, isn't she? So she's geared up to get that calf to survive, right? Which is really important. So you give her extra energy, what she's going to do is she's going to basically put that in the milk. And next thing, what do you got to fight? Milk scours, don't you? So the idea is get it on before and then hang on afterwards, right? Hang on afterwards But the idea of trying to pick up body condition after calving is almost impossible, okay? Because you gotta feed her a lot of energy. Playing catch up is almost as expensive, it's expensive and usually not practical. 70% of supplementary energy that you give her after calving, what does she do? Put it into milk production. So the moral of the story is get ahead, right? And sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, right? Especially if you have some challenging times. We had a winter that we had every 2 weeks, we had cattle wet and it was sub-zero weather, sub-zero temperature. And it was a tough go for them, right? They couldn't generate enough body heat to keep things going, okay? If they would have been in a little bit better body condition, they can basically weather something. But the idea is that if you're gonna try to catch up on body condition after calving, it's not gonna work very well. Target young cows and calves in condition score 6. One is they have I'll show you here in a few minutes, a longer postpartum interval. I don't care what you do, they'll have a longer postpartum interval, period. They're lactating for the first time, repairing their reproductive tract, right? Get ready for the second time. And the big thing is what else? They'll grow, right? They're probably about, in most cases, maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of the mature weight at first calving. So they're still growing. Here's what I try to ask our producers to do, is feed them separate from the mature cows. Does that make sense? And the reason why is that they're gonna need higher quality feed, right? They aren't gonna be able to eat as much. The other thing is, if you feed them with mature cows, don't have enough space out there, do they get their fair share? They never do. They get bounced around, don't they? You got a question? I thought, man, that's pretty cool. Have a question? No, that's okay. No. So the idea is that can we feed them separate? And I think I work with producers. I think there should only be three feeding herds. One is mature cows. Okay. The other one is heifers that you're developing to get bred for the first time, right? You probably some heifers, and then first calf heifers, especially after calving. Those are the only 3 herds I think you should have. If you have any more than that, it's tough to manage. If you continually have mature cows that need extra feed to get back in shape before calving, something's not right, is it? Something's not right. For your given resources, she doesn't fit. Either she's too big, or she's got too much milk, or a combination of both, right? So the idea is that if you got to continually feed on your resources, mature cows with first calf heifers just to get them back up into shape, I think that's a tough go. And you got to really, that can sneak up on you pretty quick. All right. So this is days after calving on estrus, and this is days after calving. I just say after calving, it takes most cases it takes what 40 to 50 days to get the uterus back into shape for females to get rebred. The idea is 3-year-olds here, 4-year-olds in mature cows. And so if you do everything right, first calf heifers to get bred for the second time, they have a longer postpartum interval. If you do everything right, it's just the way it is, right? And that's one of the reasons why you breed heifers just a little bit ahead of the cow, right? In most cases. We target about 2 weeks because if we use Cavanese bulls, what does that do? What's the reason for a Cavanese bull? Why are they Cavanese? Shorter gestation. If I bring them 2 weeks ahead, they're probably going to calve at least 3 weeks ahead of the cows, right? And so that's what we do. And even if you do everything right, first calf heifers and 4-year-olds are going to have longer postpartum intervals. What will increase the postpartum interval? Age is a factor. I showed you that right here. What's the other factor? Nutrition. If they calve in poor body condition, increased postpartum interval. What's the other one? Which is the biggie? Dystocia. Exactly. Yeah. If they have calving difficulty, that will increase that postpartum interval. So you got to think about, especially in young cows. We don't have a lot of calving difficulty in our old cows, but in young cows, how do you make sure that they don't go through calving difficulty? Well, you use Cavanese bulls and those kinds of things, right? Okay. So I just say, even if you do everything right, postpartum interval on young cows is going to be greater than old cows, right? And I call an old cow 4-year-old and older. 4-year-olds should be able to fit into your cow. The other thing that I say is that, well, this is one of the reasons why I manage them separate. Okay. Is that this is weeks relative to calving, and this is on this other axis is dry matter intake. So on your test today is going to be that equation. So make sure you memorize that equation, okay? All I know is somebody did that. Good graduate student did that. But here's the idea: is what happens to intake of first calf heifers as they move closer to calving? what happens? Goes down, doesn't go down much, but goes down. So here's the deal, is that she has a small rumen, right? She's got a big calf in there, and she's getting squeezed on how much she can eat because there's not enough room in there, right? So the idea is that another reason why you need to feed first calf heifers separate from the cow herd is that intake will go down, quality of diet really needs to go up, right? Because her intake's going down, right? It rebounds about 2 weeks afterwards, but that's a critical time right in there, isn't it? Right? So another reason why that you need to have those cows, have first calf heifers, separate from the cow herd. Go ahead.
Does it make a difference if you're calving in twos or threes? Does that change any of that?
Yeah, the older they are, it changes, right? Because all of a sudden the rumen gets bigger, doesn't it? Very good question, right? It doesn't happen in mature cows either, right? Because you got a pretty big old rumen sitting in there. You got a calf in there too, but still she's mature and she's got a bigger rumen. So as they get older, so we just did it on heifers. We didn't do anything else. Okay. So I wouldn't anticipate, and once you get past first heifers, probably okay. Good question. All right. Have I made the point, Doug? We're good to go. Here's the other thing that I'd say, is that sometimes we get into a situation. Don't worry about the weights on that side. But this is some really good work done by David Bauman at Oklahoma State. And Hannah, you're from Oklahoma State too, and I'm from Oklahoma State. So that's good lineage right there. So you guys hired a pretty good person. So here's what the deal is that sometimes you get the notion that you can feed calving difficulty out of your first calf. Let's say that the worry is if I feed her too much energy, is that I'll have big calves. And I just want to show you that if you don't feed her, she's going to be old. Okay. So right here, this kind of greenish line is that she's calving less than body condition score 5, and we maintained her. The black line is calving less than body condition score 5, and we tried to catch her up. Blue line is greater than body condition score 5 and maintain, and then greater than body condition score 5 and gain. Okay, those two numbers aren't different. 94 versus 91. Statistically, they're not different. But you can't play catch up again, can you? Right? It just says if you don't feed her prior to calving, right? If you feed her in lower body condition, all you do is feed her out of her next calf. Okay, or a later calf. Okay, and she's already weaned off a light calf. You don't want to wean off another light calf because she breeds later in the breeding season. She calves later in the season. So the idea is there's a lot of tools out there now that you can use to manage, right, a calving difficulty. There's more technology in that space, Doug, right now than there's ever been. So you can do that. So the idea is you can't feed it out of them, model feed. So I'm about ready to wrap it up here, I think. So from forage standpoint, when does the forage meet the animal's requirements? Okay, and I told you in Nebraska, at least our data would say, you keep her grazing and you're gonna be economical. You gotta keep her grazing and still meet her requirements, right? That would be really important. So when do the gaps occur? Are the gaps energy or protein or both? Okay. I think the idea that we harped on protein enough is that sometimes it's energy, okay, especially after calving. How do we economically cover the gaps? And management practices to reduce or eliminate the gaps, right? Let me just give you a quick story. I got time for a quick story, Doug?
Yes, sir.
Quick story here is that as you take a look at it, keep her grazing, you're going to be profitable. It's just hard to beat. So what we thought, we have March calvers, and so we have a March and April, and so we don't get grass in eastern Nebraska till May 1, and in the sandfield it's about May 20th to almost June 1. So that's a pretty good gap. And now you folks, I don't know if you guys calve too, or you folks calve too. You got some gaps like that, don't you? Right? So the idea that we thought that we would do is that we would look at summer calving. So calve them in June. Okay? And the data looks pretty good. I'll just tell you, you don't feed any hay. You feed a little bit more supplement, right? They calve on grass almost. And you start the breeding season, what if you calve in June, July, August, you start breeding in August, right? You get calves, is that about right? All right. August, September, breeding. So it on paper it looked really good. For mature cows, it looked really good. For heifers getting bred the first time, looked really good. for heifers trying to get bred for the second time, stumped. It was a challenge to get it bred for the second time. Because all of a sudden now you're trying to breed young females, still trying to grow, lactating for the first time, and what do you have forage doing? Down, going down. We tried supplementation, worked just a little bit. We tried a little bit of Nico, we tried a little bit of DIP, also UIP, stuff like that, RUP. You still couldn't get them, tried a little bit of bull exposure. But it looked really good, and you almost cut you eliminate a lot of expenses, right? Because you're not feeding any hay. Labor's a lot cheaper. The only downside is the calf slider is right? Because if you wean in October and you can in June and July, it's gonna be lighter. So the idea is that you offset calf weight by cow cost, right? And then you have a different market for that calf. So that looked really good, worked really good for mature cows, but wasn't really good for first calf heifers, okay? And trying to get rebred for the second time. A good lesson to learn. So what do we do? Those that are about 75% of the cow herds in Nebraska calve in March and April. About 15, maybe 10% are late spring, early summer calvers, but they move it back to calve in May, April, May, June, okay, instead of June, July. Okay, then we have a few fall calvers, and all fall calvers and your fall calvers are totally different because really our fall calvers are late summers, right? They're July, really August calvers, okay, so it's a little bit different there. But the idea here is that think about where the gaps are, think about where the gaps are in forage, then how do you fill those gaps, right? And is it energy, protein? This is where you work with the staff here and at the university to help you figure out that kind of thing. Okay, fall calvers, fewer health problems in our system, less calving difficulty, market at a non-traditional time, which I think that's what you folks try to do. Calving may better fit the forage program. In some cases, it does. In some cases, it doesn't. Complements a spring calving herd. So we would have herds that have both spring and fall calvers. Okay, and so you get double use of bulls. You get a lot of things there. The only problem is that sometimes you want to move opens to the fall, and you only let that happen one time, right? Because if you open in the fall, something's not quite right. The other thing I'd say is that I don't think so good quality forage if we're during the breeding season, at least in our system. It's a challenge because fall calvers we're breeding in November and December. And boy, it can be pretty tough then. Weather during the breeding season can be a real challenge. Lighter weaning weights in our system depends on weaning date. How do you manage replacement heifers? In our system, you may pre-feed a little bit on the replacement heifers, okay? And the idea is that you don't pre-feed a lot because you don't want to deposit any fat in the other area, right? Because that'll have an impact on future performance. We need some protection sometimes from cold weather. I know you guys got snow a couple weeks ago. I don't know how you plan for that. Cows can get fat during late gestation, okay? At least in our system, they can. And so how do you manage that? It depends on weaning date. In our system, fall calvers have a few more other problems than we do have in our spring calvers. And I think it's because the energy right after calving is right on target. We can get back to some grass. And so I think that tells us that we're probably missing them in the March calvers from an energy standpoint. Okay. I'm just going to finish up this. There's just some things out there that you might think about, especially when forage quality is not very good. There would be some work done on Monensin and right, or Rumensin, right? That'd be a Monensin, right? So the idea behind an ionophore is that it increases feed efficiency, right? And feedlot cattle increase average day of gain, but there's some reproductive kind of things that happen when you feed it to beef cow. The thing is, you got to figure out how you're going to feed it, okay? Because it can't be free choice, right? Right, Nico? Right? It can't be free choice, so you got to figure out how you feed it. It is approved for beef cow. But the idea here is that feed intake, right, is reduced, but yet feed efficiency is increased. Age of puberty is decreased, so it has some kind of effect on reproduction. Cycling before the start of the breeding season, 16% for replacement heifers, about 20%, 19% for mature cows. Days before that postpartum interval, about 18 days left for those that are being fed it, right? Pregnancy percentage, there's no difference, but the idea is you get it bred earlier, milk production's up just a little bit, okay? So the idea is that there are some tools out there. I don't think they're a Band-Aid, okay, but I think there's some tools that you can use there that could help you increase reproductive performance. You just got to figure out how you're going to get it in, okay? All right. Not all forages the same, right? This is beef and forages. We do quite a bit of testing with forages. They say average alfalfa is 15% crude protein, 56% TDN. In that alfalfa backyard right there, 12% crude protein and less than 50% TDN. That's low end. High end would be about 19-20% crude protein and about 60% TDN. So the idea is that not all forages are average, right? Some are better than average, some are less than average, and some are average. So the idea is that how do you know which ones are the good ones, which ones are the bad ones? And there's really no bad ones, right? It's just the idea of how do you feed those to the cow herd, okay? You do a lot in that cow clinic I just talked about, right? We go around and do body conditions. There's only two things we talk about in that cow clinic. We talk about body condition, we talk about sampling, and how do you, and understanding of feed analysis, okay? The idea is to sample, and good friend Jim Gosi here, but the idea is to sample, know where you're at, because supplement costs can be high. And do you need the supplement or don't you need the supplement, depending on the stage of production of those cows. I also say the way that you present it, you talk about, there's quite a bit of forage loss, depending on how you present it. There's a bale right there. It can be anywhere from 5 to 45%. So you can see in there that there's some ways that you can sure enough get a lot of wastage, but there's sure enough some ways that you can not get a lot of wastage, okay? The only thing that I'd say is that as you decrease wastage, you probably increase the iron that you need to a certain extent, okay? So I think in these cases here, anywhere from 15 to 25, 35%, you get here about 5%. But what do you have to have? You have to have a grinder, you have to have a payloader, you have to have something to take it out, right? We feed a lot of stuff, rolling it out, works out just fine. Here's the thing is that if you take out just one day's supply, they eat it up, right? If you take out one day, in one day you take out 2 days supply, guess what happens? Right? They crap on it, right? So you about gotta do it every day. Anybody have these hay busters? We feed hay out of hay busters and works really well. We do the particle size, we do mix and match, but the idea here is that, right, you have a tractor and a hay buster to get that kind of thing done. So I'd say that you have to feed harvest forages. We have to in Nebraska. Sometimes it's only a couple months, maybe a month. But the idea is that how do you reduce forage feeding losses, okay? And how do you do that economically? All right, heterosis. I'm sure Dr. Smith has talked quite a bit about this, has great effect on woolly heritable traits, reproduction, calf survival, cow longevity. I'd say, Doug, over my years, 30 plus years, it's amazing how we've moved from crossbreds to straight bred cows. And I'm not saying that, I'm just saying sometimes in your system, that's the way you go because of a marketing kind of thing that you want to do. But the idea is that heterosis affects molded heritable traits, right? Those that are influenced by management, right, or environment. And the idea here is that this is some old work, Herefords, Angus, Hereford Angus, Hereford, then talk about heterosis. So the thing that you do, heterosis, longevity is increased about 2 years, right? Number of calves, right? Almost 1.5, and then weight of those calves over that time period about 166 pounds. And so the idea is that if you have the opportunity to get into heterosis, it'd be really important, okay? And I'd say you don't have to have 100% heterosis. You got to have some, okay, in a commercial cow-calf operation. If there's other things that you have from a marketing standpoint, then I'm fine, with straight bred. But here's what I read in the magazine once: you can't be a straight bred cow for ease of maintenance, longevity, and mothering. You think that's true? He's laughing, but it was in there, right? And so the idea is, I think you got to be careful. Now, this is some work at Mark, right? Those bell-shaped curves, right? That's a trait, right? And a trait follows a bell-shaped curve, doesn't it? Right? And so that's for mature weight. And so the idea here is that don't think that if you select on one end of that, on one end down here, select on this end, right? And you have cows on this end, that's heterosis, right? That's within breed differences, right? It's not heterosis. And so I was really surprised by that comment, but just be careful, okay? Because that's not heterosis. Okay, this is the last slide. I'm not on time. I'm not on time, okay? Okay, here's what I think that I have you really think about is that here's what producers have control of. They have control of genetics, don't you? You have control of cow size, right? You have control of milk output, right? What are the two biggest drags on the nutrition program? Cow size and milk production. So you gotta make sure that's matched up, okay? So you have control of that. And I'd say there's more tools out there to head that direction than there's ever been. The other flip side of that is that there's more tools out there to head the wrong direction. So you just gotta understand what those mean, okay? The greatest tools that you have in your toolbox are when milk production occurs, right? That's when calving occurs, and when weaning occurs. I think those are the two biggest tools that you have in your toolbox, right? Because we just talked about the reason why, right? They impact some things that really impact performance. So they also impact performance, reproductive performance, but also impact how you're going to utilize feed resources, right? So the other thing that you have control of is marketing. So I think there's a lot of tools out there, but I think the biggest tools that you have are when calving occurs and when weaning occurs, and the genetic package that you have for your operation. Pretty simple, isn't it? Pretty simple to talk about, but sometimes more difficult to do, isn't it? All right. Okay. That's it. I hope we got time for a few questions. It's been a pleasure to be here.